Welcome to week 2 of the Leadership Podcast, our personal Within Clear Creek Leadership Podcast. So last week, obviously we heard Brian talk about qualities, like what makes a good employee, what makes a good leader, and then also relationships, how to build relationships within the company as well as with customers. So this week, we're talking to the president himself, Mr. Justin Fraker. So, Justin, I know leadership is very important, and this company is very important to you. But how did you get started with Clear Creek?
Well, that goes back to 2012, whenever I was hired here. Answered an ad on Craigslist, and something that we still utilize today to post ads for job openings, but kind of similar situation. I came in, and Ann was here, and Ann set me down to talk. I was actually applying for an accounting position that they had open at the time. And she informed me they already filled that, but she asked if I would be interested in a parts position. I didn't know a whole lot about parts, but I said, sure, why not? And she asked me a couple simple questions about parts and said, you're hired. So, kind of similar to what we do today. We just find people that we think would be good fits with us, and we just run with it. So that's how I got started here at Clear Creek. It's been a heck of a ride, and look forward to a lot of years to come.
Awesome. So I think we all know that you're kind of an idea guy, right? Like Justin's always going, hey, I've got this idea. But more than that, so usually someone who's like, I've got an idea, usually not so good at let's execute that idea. Normally it's, it's fun to talk about and fun to brainstorm. But you, I don't know if you've always been this way or at least recently you were very good, like, okay, now let's plan it out and actually execute that. So how have you been able to train yourself to move from just ideas to actually the execution? I
would give a lot of credit to Brian and then the old leadership here with Mark that used to own the business, that I'd have ideas all the time of why don't we do this or why don't we do that, and Brian's response a lot of times would be, well, then do it. And that kind of gave me the mindset of you don't have to have the resources. Like, you could come up with this grandiose plan of you want to do this in the business and you think it's going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's start at the ground up. And a good book I read was The Game of Business by Mark Cuban that taught me this, that you can do anything with little to no resources. So if you can't execute on a small scale, how are you going to execute that on a larger scale that's going to blow up into this huge thing for us? So if you have an idea, start at the ground. How can you do this for free right now? Or just utilize the resources around you to make that goal or that mission possible, and then let's start executing it. So I think that's important in business, that it doesn't have to be this major investment into our own business for ideas that we have. We can do it on a smaller scale, and if it's working there, then let's scale it up to be this big thing for us. So.
Yeah. So that's an idea I've heard before, and I think Craig Rochelle mentioned it, of doing something good now was better than potentially doing something great in the future. Like you're saying, you got to start here to get to there and build that up. So doing that, though, you have to have a really keen attention to detail, because if details are slipping through the cracks, you're sunk.
Yeah.
Right. So how as leaders and can we as Clear Creek really focus on those details?
Well, certainly you have to have a plan. And one thing that I'm big on is goals. Beginning of the year, every year, I write down some personal goals for my life. I think that if you don't have goals, then what are you doing throughout the course of the year to make yourself better? So the journey, you don't know which way you're going. You don't know which way you're headed if you don't have the destination ahead of you. So I always am big on written goals, having a plan. So if we're talking about details matter, then execute a plan there. One of the things I did early on in our business was I had a belief that we would rent a lot of four-wheel drive vehicles, and it was a substantial investment at the time, probably $100,000 in four-wheel drive utility vehicles that we could rent. And whenever I brought it up to leadership at the time, they said, write a business plan. And that was one thing that kind of got me started on. It's like, it's up to you. So if you can create the business plan and you can execute your business plan, then it would be successful. So I detailed out the budget. I detailed out how much we're going to rent them for, how many vehicles we're going to have, what are we going to do to market this out in the workplace or like out in the community. And that was something that opened my eyes up to, actually executing something that was out there. But as far as like details throughout the course of business, there's certainly a lot of things I think that people don't realize that they look at, but it actually influences their decisions on whether or not they do business with us, whether or not people are even stopping in to give us the chance to do business with them. And it's just things that you don't even notice that you are noticing every single day of your life. So it certainly matters, and I always tell people, think like a consumer rather than an employee. So if you were a customer driving down the highway here, what's going to make you stop into that store? What's going to make you remember that store's there whenever you are in the market for a golf car, or utility vehicle, or whatever it is? Because it's those little bitty details is what actually can be the difference between you getting the opportunity with a customer and you never having that opportunity at all.
Yeah, so you mentioned taking ownership. Like Mark and Brian really gave you that chance to hey, if you think this is going to work, own it and do it. So how can us, who's not, I guess technically, we've not bought into the company, so to speak, but I know you guys really preach like take ownership, think like an owner. So how can we do that? Like how can we really reach out and take ownership of something and run with it?
Well, a lot of that is just coming up with ideas. And I've always been an idea person, but if you think that you believe in what we're doing here, if you think that we're headed in the correct direction, but how can we get better? What can we do that's going to make every single day a little bit better than the last day, and every year a little bit better than the last year? And then just go present those ideas. Like I had, at the time of all that stuff, I had no business putting together a business plan. I didn't even know what a business plan was. I was in college at the time. But, what did I do? I got on Google and I just typed in, what is a business plan? And they gave me an opportunity. And I think everyone within our organization has that opportunity today. It's just get with your managers, get with the leadership here, tell them your idea, take 5 minutes of their time, and just let them know that you're thinking about things. It may be absolutely not, we're not going to do that. But it may be like, hey, that's a great idea. Why don't we give that a go and see where that goes?
Yeah, that's really good. So you mentioned figuring things out. And that's something that I've definitely seen in you and trying to learn more from you in that. So, kind of share with us as leaders and within Clear Creek, how important is that to just like get in there and figure stuff out? Like how do you do that?
I love people. That's like my number one quality whenever I'm looking at someone to hire or somebody within our organization to promote or continue to go through the ranks here is someone's ability to figure something out. And that's wildly important. And I always say that if you don't know something, it's because you didn't ask or you didn't try. And those are, I think, the only two excuses that you can possibly have in this day and age, because you have a little phone in your pocket. It's got a little thing called Google, and you can get on there and you can figure out anything you want to. In 2018, I bought my first home, and it was a fixer-upper, and I have zero construction experience. But I flipped the whole house all by myself, and was solely from YouTube videos, learning how to, whether it's remove popcorn ceiling, to do drywall, to just anything you can imagine, redo trim, lay down flooring, all that stuff is things that I never had any clue or experience with how to do. And it was one YouTube video showed me how to do it. And I feel like I've always been that kind of person that maybe questions everything. And so whether it's driving down the road and I see a oil rig or something like that, and I'm just like, how does that work? And I would just get online and figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing every single day in this business. If you're curious on how anything works within our organization, ask the questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Just ask, be genuine about your desire to learn these things within the organization. But there's always something that you can learn here. I still learn every single day, whether it's with Ann, she'll tell me how to read some sort of report, or whether it's with Brian on how he handles relationships with customers. And I mean, there's always something to learn here, but you're never going to figure it out and you're never going to know unless you ask those questions.
Yeah, so one of my questions I'd like to learn more about, something that you guys talk about a lot, is the golden penny rule. I know last year we had the big conference call with everybody on, and kind of sharing this, and everybody got a penny and a dime. So walk us through, what's the golden penny rule, and why is that something we really are trying to get a hold of?
So I mean, a penny doesn't sound like much money, and something that Jerry's a big proponent of, and I've had mentors throughout my life talk about the golden penny as well. But so it's basically just stating that 1% can move the needle dramatically.
So what's like some specific examples on it? How can the service department, how can the sales team, how can each of our departments save a penny in a transaction?
So there's some good ones. I mean, transportation's the easiest one is making sure things are right before they hit the road, and that ties in with service as well. But if you got a half dozen nuts and bolts that are still loose whenever you added a rear seat on the back of the car, and the car gets delivered 2.5 hours away, customer picks the car up from our guys, and he says, "Hey, all these bolts are loose." Well, there's a good example that you're going to have to drive 2.5 hours back to wherever you're coming from. You're going to have your technician have to get back on the job where he could have been producing something somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And then, that could have cost us $500-$600 just on that one mistake. There's other things like whether it's washing your hands. I mean, taking 10 paper towels, do you really need to do that to dry off your hands? Everything that you do throughout your day impacts the bottom dollar here, and it goes a long ways at the end of the year. Just making sure you're conscious of your pennies is very important.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up here. It's no secret that for many of us, faith plays an important part of our lives and kind of dictates how we work and working hard. So for you, how is faith, how is hard work, how has that really played a role in your professional career and in your life?
So I've been very lucky to have some good mentors throughout my life. And all of them have been Christians. And it's not that I really went and seeked out those people that were Christian, faith-based people, but it was what I've always been drawn to. And they've always encouraged me to be more involved, whether it's with a church or, in prayer, or I can't tell you for how many years Brian told me that I needed to come to Bible study and I didn't do it. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that that's been a bigger role in my life. But I don't think that it's any coincidence that this company is a Christian company and we've got the success that we've got. And we continue to grow, and we continue to lean on God for the wisdom that He gives us in making these decisions. I mean, He brings great people into our lives. All you guys out there, I mean, we wouldn't have probably found you without it. So it's wildly important on what we do on a day-to-day basis. I think faith plays here. But hard work is something some of you guys right now are laughing at whenever I say hard work, because I guess I would clarify myself as a smarter, not harder guy. And processes has always been a big thing to me. So I like to look at how can we make something easier versus harder. So I think that you can do that throughout the whole organization, which that goes back to the golden penny rule, because if you can cut someone's time down by 10% as they're working on something, then we should do that, because that's a lot of time throughout the year that you're going to free up for somebody else. But especially in the early stages with Clear Creek, there were a lot of hard work put in. Like whenever I was involved, there was we got Dwayne and George back here that are making faces at me as we're doing this, but yeah. But the hard work side of things, I mean, I was working 6 days a week for 6 or 7 years, just trying to grow the business. And I wasn't scared of it. I always believed in this business, and I always felt like this was going to be something that you wanted to be along the ride of for the next, 10, 15 years, because I always felt like this business had all the opportunity in the world to keep growing. And I even had some of my mentors throughout my time tell me I was crazy for not taking another position somewhere else. And I had one mentor in particular that set me up to, for this awesome job opportunity. And before I ever even went and interviewed for it, I had turned it down. And he thought I was absolutely bonkers in doing that. And, he passed away earlier this year. He was a great man, but before he passed away, when he found out that I became an owner in this organization, he came up to me and he told me that he was proud of me for turning down that opportunity. And he goes, "You believed in it, you stuck with it," and he goes, "I'm proud of you for doing that." And that was so important for me to hear, because I always did believe in it. So I think it's trust in your gut, trust in what God's telling you to do, and the rest is going to work out just fine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Justin. We'll finish up next week. We'll wrap up our series with Jerry Marty, our principal owner. I need to come up with a fun, quippy saying like Craig Rochelle to finish this off, but I won't. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.